The room went silent the moment Daniel Mercer realized he was in the wrong meeting. Not awkward silence. Not polite silence. The kind of silence that feels like a spotlight snapping on while everyone else sits comfortably in the dark. Daniel stood frozen just inside the conference room doorway, one hand still gripping the metal handle, heart pounding like he'd been caught trespassing in his own life. 22 pairs of eyes stared back at him, some curious, some annoyed, a few already dismissive. A woman in a charcoal blazer cleared her throat. "Can we help you?" she asked. Daniel swallowed. Behind him, the door clicked shut. That click landed harder than it should have. It was 8:03 a.m., and outside the Mapleton Civic Center in Mapleton, Indiana, early fall sunlight filtered through turning trees like it was trying to soften bad news. The air smelled like damp leaves and coffee from the cafe across the street. Pickup trucks lined the curb next to sedans with faded bumper stickers. A banner flapped above the entrance, "Welcome regional business leaders." Daniel had read that sign. He just hadn't understood it. He'd come for Room B, the weekly job search workshop hosted by the local workforce office. Resume reviews, interview tips, folding chairs and lukewarm encouragement. Instead, he'd walked into Room A. The wrong door, the wrong meeting, the wrong version of his morning. "Sorry," Daniel said quickly, voice cracking just enough to betray him. This isn't the job workshop, is it?" A few people exchanged looks. A man with silver hair and an expensive watch smiled faintly. "No," he said, "this is the quarterly strategy session for the Mapleton Small Business Alliance." Daniel felt heat crawl up his neck. "Oh," he said, "right, then I'm definitely not supposed to be here." A ripple of quiet laughter moved through the room, not cruel, but not comforting either. Daniel nodded awkwardly, turned toward the door, and fumbled the handle like it had suddenly developed opinions about him. The woman in the blazer spoke again. "Wait." Daniel froze. "Yes," he said, hopeful and terrified at the same time. She studied him for a moment. "You're already here," she said. "You might as well sit." A beat. Daniel blinked. I don't think I belong." Another voice chimed in, warm, amused. "Most people here don't feel like they belong either. They just hide it better." That voice belonged to Thomas Avery, late 50s, neatly trimmed beard, relaxed posture, eyes sharp but kind. He gestured to an empty chair near the back. Daniel hesitated. Every instinct told him to leave. To retreat. To go find Room B where failure was expected and invisible. Instead, his feet moved. He sat. Daniel Mercer was 29 years old, unemployed for 9 months, and living in his childhood bedroom in a split-level house on the edge of town. The wallpaper still had faint dinosaur outlines from when he was 8. His mother pretended not to notice. His father pretended not to worry. That morning, Daniel wore his interview outfit, navy button-down, khakis ironed the night before, brown shoes with scuffed toes. It was the nicest he'd looked in weeks. And now he was sitting in a room full of business owners discussing supply chains and expansion timelines. He kept his hands folded tightly in his lap. The meeting resumed. Charts appeared on the screen. Acronyms flew past him. People spoke confidently, interrupting each other with practiced ease. Daniel understood maybe half of it. But he listened. Really listened. School buses growled down Main Street. A jogger waved at a crossing guard. The town looked exactly like it always had. Brick storefronts, modest homes, flags on porches, quiet persistence baked into the sidewalks. Inside Room A, Daniel felt like an accidental tourist in a future he hadn't been invited to. Yet, halfway through the meeting, something unexpected happened. Someone asked a question. No one answered. Silence again, this time different. Daniel felt it before he understood it. A familiar tension, the kind he'd felt in college group projects. In past jobs right before layoffs. The moment where everyone knew something was wrong but no one wanted to be the first to say it. He raised his hand. It lifted on its own, like his body had decided before his brain could object. "Yes," the woman in the blazer said, surprised. Daniel cleared his throat. I don't know if this helps, but when I worked at Harrison Supply, we had a similar issue with vendors. We fixed it by," he explained. Simply, clearly, no jargon. The room leaned in. Thomas Avery smiled. The woman nodded slowly. Someone scribbled notes. Daniel finished and immediately wished he could disappear. Instead, the room filled with murmurs of agreement. "That's actually a solid point," someone said. The woman in the blazer looked at him differently now. "What was your name again?" "Daniel," he said. "Daniel Mercer." The meeting ended 20 minutes later. People stood, stretched, chatted. Thomas Avery approached Daniel, extending a hand. "You came to the wrong meeting," he said. Daniel nodded. "Story of my life." Thomas chuckled. "Or maybe the right one." Daniel laughed politely, not trusting that sentence yet. Outside, the wind lifted fallen leaves into small spirals, like the town itself was rearranging something quietly. Daniel stepped out into the sunlight, heart racing, not with embarrassment this time, with possibility. Daniel Mercer stepped out of the Mapleton Civic Center, breathing in the crisp mid-October air as if it could cleanse months of quiet despair. The wind stirred amber leaves across the cracked sidewalks and lifted a stray newspaper that had been lying forgotten for a week. He followed it for a moment with his eyes before shrugging and heading toward his beat-up Honda Civic, parked beneath a small maple tree shedding its last bright orange leaves. Every step felt like a gentle proof of existence. A small, stubborn assertion that despite unemployment, despite missed opportunities, despite walking into the wrong meeting, he was still moving forward. The encounter with Thomas Avery and the unplanned discussion had left him dizzy with adrenaline, and maybe, just maybe, hope. He replayed the moment when he had offered that off-the-cuff suggestion about vendor management. He remembered the subtle nods, the scribbling of notes, the polite murmurs of agreement. It had been terrifying to speak up, yet satisfying in a way he hadn't felt since college. Daniel climbed into his car, the heater warming the interior quickly, fogging up the windows slightly. As he drove through Mapleton's suburban streets, he noted the familiar sights. The red brick church with peeling white trim, kids biking to school with mismatched socks and helmets too big for their heads, the corner diner with its neon, open, sign flickering intermittently. The town moved with an easy rhythm, like it had all the time in the world, but Daniel's mind whirled. His phone buzzed. A LinkedIn notification. A message from Thomas Avery himself. "Daniel, great point today. Let's schedule a quick coffee next week. Some ideas we could explore together." Daniel almost swerved in his excitement. Coffee with Thomas Avery, a real business leader, a man whose handshake alone probably carried influence. This was the kind of connection that could have taken years to cultivate, except it hadn't. He had stumbled into it. He laughed softly, a little self-deprecating, a little triumphant. Blank. Back at the apartment, Daniel returned to his small split-level apartment on Hickory Lane, the same one he'd lived in since graduating college. The room smelled faintly of old carpet and brewing coffee. Posters of cityscapes and motivational quotes clung to the walls, faded and curling. A stack of bills sat untouched on the counter, and the small futon in the living room looked like it had given up hope. Daniel dropped his keys on the table and sank into the couch. His laptop waited, open to the job workshop Zoom page. He had meant to log in, but now it felt secondary. He opened the LinkedIn message again, staring at the screen. It felt unreal. The words glowed in front of him like a promise. Okay, he whispered to himself, maybe wrong meetings aren't always wrong. His gaze drifted toward the calendar on the wall. Next week, coffee with Thomas Avery. Maybe he'd prepare. Maybe he'd rehearse. Maybe he'd do nothing at all and just let his natural curiosity speak. And maybe, just maybe, luck, or fate, wasn't about timing. It was about being present when opportunity accidentally walked in through the wrong door. 2 days later, Daniel found himself at Rosie's Corner Cafe, a small, family-owned shop with chipped green paint on the exterior and a bell over the door that jingled with every entrant. Mapleton locals gathered here like clockwork, seniors with crossword puzzles, teenagers sipping overpriced lattes, moms balancing grocery bags and toddlers. He arrived early, slightly overdressed, slightly nervous. The bell jingled as Thomas Avery entered moments later, carrying a briefcase and a confident stride. Daniel waved, and Avery smiled warmly, waving back. They sat in a corner booth. Avery ordered black coffee. Daniel opted for a chai latte, mostly for the comfort of something warm in his hands. Avery leaned forward. "So," he said casually, "I wanted to follow up on your suggestion from the meeting." Daniel nodded. "I'm just glad it helped." Avery's eyes twinkled. "It wasn't just helpful, it was the spark we needed to see the problem differently. You might not know it, but that comment opened doors we didn't know existed." Daniel nearly choked on his latte. The conversation could have been stiff, but Daniel's natural awkwardness saved him. He gestured wildly while speaking, knocking his latte slightly. Coffee sloshed dangerously close to the table's edge. "Oh no," he muttered, catching the cup just in time. Avery chuckled. "Don't worry about it. It's coffee, not nuclear fallout." Daniel laughed nervously. "That's comforting." The ice broke instantly. The two men talked strategy, logistics, future possibilities, and before long, Daniel realized he was being heard, not just politely, but actively. His ideas mattered here. His presence mattered. This was the moment where wrong meetings became right opportunities. After a while, Avery leaned back. Daniel, there's a small networking luncheon next month. Business leaders from around the county will be there. I think you should come. You have a perspective that's different, valuable. Daniel felt the weight of disbelief pressing in. Networking events were usually terrifying. Formalities, expectations, conversations rehearsed in advance. But Avery's invitation was informal, almost casual, yet held potential for real change. He smiled. I'd like that. Avery extended his hand. Consider it a formal welcome to the Mapleton network. By accident, yes, but welcome nonetheless. Daniel shook it, firm and confident. The cafe felt warmer now, the sunlight streaming through the window somehow brighter, like the universe was giving him a wink. As Daniel left the cafe, stepping out into the brisk October air, he realized something. He hadn't planned any of this. He hadn't aimed for connection, influence, or networking mastery. He had simply walked through the wrong door. And that single misstep, awkward, humiliating, terrifying, had created a genuine, life-changing opportunity. Daniel laughed softly, shaking his head. He would tell the story later, maybe with embellishments, maybe with self-deprecation. But tonight, he walked home thinking, sometimes failure isn't failure. Sometimes, it's the detour that leads to the right path. And in Mapleton, as leaves swirled around his feet and the town hummed with small-town life, Daniel Mercer finally felt like he belonged somewhere. Daniel Mercer woke to a crisp November morning in Mapleton, the kind where the sun is bright but doesn't warm much, and the breeze carries the scent of damp leaves and roasting coffee from neighborhood cafes. The sidewalks were slick with early frost, and maple leaves clung stubbornly to branches, trembling in the wind. He stared at his reflection in the small bathroom mirror of his split-level apartment. His brown hair, slightly unkempt from restless sleep, framed pale eyes that now shone with a mixture of excitement and terror. Today was the day of the networking luncheon. A small, seemingly casual gathering that carried enormous stakes in Daniel's mind. His reflection whispered a truth he had been avoiding. He had never felt like he belonged in these circles. But maybe, just maybe, this was his moment to change that. By 11:30 a.m., Daniel pulled into the parking lot of the Mapleton Country Club, an expansive property with manicured lawns, golf carts idling near the entrance, and red brick facades reminiscent of old Ivy League schools. The main hall buzzed with chatter and the clinking of cutlery. Daniel adjusted his navy blazer, rolled his sleeves carefully, and exhaled. His outfit, once meant for interviews, now felt slightly too formal among the mix of casual smart attire, blazers paired with jeans, sweaters under sport coats, scarves draped with understated confidence. As he entered the main room, the smell of roasted turkey, pumpkin bread, and freshly brewed coffee hit him. A string quartet played softly in the corner, providing the type of soundtrack that immediately made him aware of how little he belonged, or at least how much he thought he didn't. Almost immediately, Daniel was approached by a woman with striking red hair and sharp green eyes, Samantha Cole, mid-30s, wearing a tailored blouse and a patterned scarf. "You must be Daniel," she said, extending her hand. "Thomas Avery mentioned you." Daniel nodded nervously. "Yeah, that's me." "Come on," she said, pulling him toward a group standing near the buffet table. "You'll want to meet this crew. They're interesting." Interesting, Daniel thought. Could he survive interesting? The group consisted of Robert, Bobby, King, late 40s, mustache, Hawaiian shirt under a blazer, holding a plate of turkey like a sword. Linda Morales, early 50s, thick glasses, earrings jangling, gesturing animatedly about local small business taxes. Tyler Nguyen, 22, sharp fade haircut, energetic posture, practically vibrating from excitement over some new app he had launched. Daniel attempted introductions. Awkward smiles. Handshakes that were either too firm or too limp. He felt like a penguin at a flamingo convention. Then came the first mishap. Bobby King, in an attempt to demonstrate his theory about food as networking glue, accidentally nudged a stack of small plates. One plate slipped, hit the edge of the table, and sent a cascade of tiny hors d'oeuvres flying. Daniel lunged, trying to catch them. He failed. Cheese cubes landed on his blazer. Mini sandwiches toppled to the floor. Someone screamed softly. Tyler Nguyen ducked under a chandelier. Samantha Cole burst into laughter. "Welcome to Mapleton Networking." Daniel laughed too, though it was nervous. Somehow, in that chaotic moment, the tension melted. Thomas Avery appeared, bemused. "It gets better," he said, as if this spectacle was part of the official agenda. After the food fiasco, Daniel managed to clean up enough to feel human again. Conversation shifted naturally to business ideas. Surprisingly, Daniel realized he had something to offer. Linda Morales leaned in. "So you worked at Harrison Supply. Thomas said you had a unique approach to vendor logistics." Daniel explained a method he had implemented years ago. Simple, practical, effective. He spoke without jargon, only real-world examples. People listened, really listened. By the end of the discussion, he was not only included but respected. Bobby King slapped his shoulder. "Kid, you've got ideas. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Daniel felt something swelling inside, a combination of pride, relief, and disbelief. This was the moment he had been waiting for, though he didn't know it existed. An hour later, Daniel found himself paired with Tyler Nguyen at a table near the large bay windows. Tyler, 22, enthusiastic and slightly naive, asked, "So, how do you handle everything?" "The uncertainty." Daniel smiled, thinking of the wrong meeting that led here. "You don't handle it all. You respond to what's in front of you. And sometimes, you just show up, even if it's the wrong door." Tyler's eyes widened, impressed. "That's actually brilliant." And in that exchange, Daniel realized the true life lesson. It wasn't about avoiding mistakes. It was about turning mistakes into bridges. Before the luncheon ended, several attendees exchanged cards with Daniel. Invitations to small collaborations, coffee meetings, local business projects. Each card represented possibility. Each handshake, trust in his competence. Thomas Avery approached again. "Daniel, I knew that suggestion in the wrong meeting would get attention." "I didn't expect this," he said, nodding at the flurry of business cards in Daniel's hand. Daniel laughed quietly, thinking of the irony. The wrong door, the awkward introductions, the flying appetizers, had all led to an entire network opening up before him. Sometimes life delivered opportunities disguised as chaos. The Mapleton Country Club quieted as the luncheon wound down. Daniel Mercer found himself leaning against a polished mahogany railing, a half-empty glass of water in hand, watching the room buzz with conversation. The earlier chaos, the flying appetizers, spilled coffee, awkward introductions, felt like a distant memory, softened by laughter and human warmth. Daniel realized something profound. He hadn't planned any of this. And yet, somehow, he belonged here now. Thomas Avery approached with his characteristic easy smile. "You handled yourself well today," he said, adjusting the cuff of his blazer. Daniel shrugged modestly, still catching his breath. I said what I knew." "That's exactly it," Avery replied. "Sometimes expertise isn't polished jargon or a PowerPoint, it's your experience and honesty." People respond to that. Daniel felt a warmth rise in his chest, a mix of pride and disbelief. Just a few weeks ago, he had been unemployed, pacing his childhood bedroom, scrolling through job postings that never responded. Now, he held 3 genuine connections and a follow-up coffee meeting already scheduled. Across the room, Samantha Cole waved him over. "Daniel, you have to meet Frank Reynolds. He's opening a supply chain consultancy and could use someone just like you." Daniel exhaled slowly. Frank Reynolds, mid-40s, sharp jawline, quiet demeanor, observing the room with precision. He extended his hand. "I hear you have insights we need," he said. Daniel laughed quietly, thinking about how wrong meetings led him here. He shook Frank's hand firmly. As Daniel conversed, another minor disaster unfolded. Bobby King, still wearing his Hawaiian shirt with unmatched confidence, tripped on a chair leg and almost collided with a table of desserts. Cookies flew. Muffins rolled. Daniel instinctively caught one before it hit the floor. "Thanks," Bobby said, wide-eyed, embarrassed. "I guess I'm still bringing excitement wherever I go." Daniel chuckled. "You do more than just bring excitement, Bobby, you make people pay attention." Even Avery laughed. Mapleton wouldn't be Mapleton without him. And in that moment, Daniel realized the true magic of community. Imperfection, humor, and human errors didn't detract from opportunity, they enhanced it. After the luncheon ended, Thomas Avery invited Daniel for a short walk outside. The sun had dipped lower, casting long shadows across Mapleton's manicured lawns. The air smelled of frost, wet leaves, and faint wood smoke from chimneys. "Daniel," Avery began, "today shows that life has a way of testing us with the wrong door, the wrong meeting, or the wrong timing. But what you do when you walk through, whether by mistake or courage, defines everything that follows." Daniel nodded, thinking back to the conference room, the wrong door, the awkward introductions, the flying food. Each incident had felt like a trial, but in hindsight, it was a series of tiny bridges leading him to opportunity. Avery smiled. Sometimes, the unexpected leads to the most valuable connections. You just have to show up, and stay engaged. Daniel laughed softly. So, wrong meetings aren't always wrong. Exactly, Avery replied. They're invitations in disguise. Weeks later, Daniel sat at his favorite cafe in Mapleton, reviewing a project plan with Frank Reynolds and Tyler Nguyen. Samantha Cole stopped by with notes from a small business workshop she thought Daniel might enjoy. Thomas Avery had invited him to sit in on strategy sessions and provide input. He glanced around at the town. Kids riding bikes, couples walking dogs, elderly neighbors chatting on porches. The rhythm of small-town life remained unchanged, yet Daniel's perspective had shifted completely. Life had a peculiar way of delivering lessons. Missteps were just opportunities in disguise, and every awkward moment was potentially a step toward connection, growth, and unexpected success. He smiled, thinking back to that fateful day at the Civic Center. The wrong meeting, the wrong door, the wrong moment, had been exactly the right one.
Daily happiness and motivation is hidden in. Like and subscribe.